I hate interrupting the excitement and the buzz in the room, and it feels so good to have this energy here today. The President's Luncheon, this annual event we have, is one of the many traditions at Moore Park College that makes Moore Park College so great. And it's my privilege, as well as my responsibility, to select a speaker and a theme for the luncheon. And as you know, last year was all about wellness, and we had somebody come to talk to us about the emotional and psychological challenges that she had to overcome and did. This year's theme is about civic engagement. And why is that important? It's important because one of the critical functions that the higher education, and specifically our community colleges, plays is not only to help our students to prepare them for great careers, although that's a very important function, or maybe our primal function, but it is also to help our students become fully engaged citizens who will help us to preserve and further this great democratic republic for at least another 250 years. In a few minutes, I get to introduce to you our guest speaker, Dr. Haco Hoang, and it's been such a pleasure to get to sit at her table and get to visit with her. She's rearranged her schedule, I want you to know, in order to be able to be with us today, so we're privileged to have her here with us. But before I introduce Dr. Hoang to you, I want to share with you an example of what we mean by civic engagement. This is Peyton Robinson that's going to come talk to us first. He's a brand new Moore Park student, comes out of Moore Park High School, and he came to see me like in his first week on campus. I didn't even have the courage to go see a counselor throughout my college education. And Peyton just showed up, and this young man, mark my words, will set the world on fire. I'll probably have to clear out of my office in a couple of years because he's going to be taking over. That applause was not appreciated. And I'm going to have to spend the next year tamping down Peyton's expectations as he moves us toward his own vision of what the college can be. Peyton, come on up and introduce yourself to everyone.
It's really nice seeing all you guys. So, my name is Peyton Robinson, and before I tell you guys about my goals for this upcoming college experience of mine, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about my high school experience, a little bit about me, and how I got here. He touched on it, President Sanchez touched on it a little bit, but I have a story for you guys. So, how I started my journey. There were two elements that got me to start Nature's Finest Club. One, this goal-setting philosophy I acquired, and my passion for nature, number two. The goal-setting philosophy, I work as a counselor at a camp called the Harold Robinson Foundation. It's a nonprofit, and it takes kids from the inner city up to the woods for 3 days, and they learn about teamwork skills, leadership skills, and community togetherness. So I'm teaching them about goal setting, about all that stuff, and what I taught them, I kind of embodied myself because it is so powerful for community work, and every community needs it. So I took that on, and with my passion for nature, always being in the woods, also my mom always gardening and stuff like that, it just happened. So those two things created Nature's Finest Club, gave me the confidence to do that, and the first meeting I had, believe it or not, I had a speech ready like I am right now talking in front of my club members. I had a speech ready in Miss Simon's room, S5, and 80 people were in that room. It was a science room, so there was a lot of extra space for labs. So there was 80 people in the room, and I gave my speech in front of everyone about my goals for the next 2 years at Moore Park High School because I was a junior when I created the club. So that was awesome, great first experience. You guys are all now Nature's Finest Club members. I hope you know that. This is my first meeting. So, yeah. But let me tell you how I applied the goal-setting philosophy and my passion into the club. First thing first, I asked, like, where can I build this garden? And Dearborn, our athletic director and land guy, was like, here you go. Here's this corner off in the middle of Siberia on campus. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want. Two obstacles we had to overcome. We had to get a main water line, and we need to build a fence to keep everyone out of it. So now it's time. I need to start using that philosophy I got to get things working. So there's a groundskeeper on our staff named Steve, and I became really good friends with him. It started out rough. I did steal some wood from him a couple of times, but it ended up being okay. He told me his goals, and I told him mine. The cool thing about it, though, is, as I said, the goal-setting philosophy. He told me his goals, which were he wants to, at Moore Park College, create a nonprofit where he can raise money through selling avocados and guacamole to provide money for the football team and get them better equipment for the football team. So I was like, all right, that's really awesome. I'll see what I can do. And what I said, I was like, yo, I need a water line because I don't have water to water my plants, and I need that. So the nearest one was like 70 feet away, and I was like, that's just too far. So like a week went by, and I saw this big hole. He had a 15-foot-long trench being dug 3 feet deep, like just right to the garden, and I was like, wow, that is awesome. So I got Don Kukos to donate a $25 gift card to him, and I started talking to a bunch of nurseries and trying to accomplish his goal now since he helped me out. And I asked Brokaw Nurseries. They are in Santa Paula, Ventura area, and they donated us 10 avocado trees and 5 citrus trees to our club and to our school. So even better, now we got some trees and we got a garden. It's both. So now with that, Steve's happy, I'm happy. That's finished. One more obstacle, got a fence to put up. So the school helped us, ASB, they helped us give them money to build a fence. And since we didn't know anyone who could build a fence, we built the fence ourselves. If you guys go to Moore Park High School, which I hope you do just to check out this garden, it is a beautiful fence, beautiful garden, and a beautiful place. And with those two people, it helped us accomplish our goals and create our first garden. So that's the garden, that's what I did. What we realized, though, was that wasn't just a garden. No. That was a place where students can come. They can come and learn. They can come and study, read, eat, just enjoy the outside environment that lives with the student. Highlights. They're not living. None of this is living. So it's just really cool to kind of be in an environment that is alive. You know, it makes you feel alive, like you're living. So that was the unexpected outcome of that goal. And with that experience under my belt, I realized exactly what I needed to do when I came to Moore Park College to complete my next goal, to help the community. So I did as much as I could. I took 2 field trips. I took an orientation class. I joined 2 programs. Shout out to GPS and then EOPS also. I joined that also. So I visited the school, I think, a grand total of 7 times, in June. And on the last time, this was how I'm here today. On the last time I visited, I was taking a tour with just someone who works here, and we were walking by just on campus, and she's like, all right, so to our right is the president's office. And I'm like, whoa, that's someone I want to meet right there. That was beautiful. I had like a president's seal on the door and everything, very official. I was like, that's someone I need to connect to. So she's like, yeah, he has an open door policy. And I'm like, okay, it sounded like the really official president. I don't know who this guy is, but he sounds cool. He was saying, she kept on talking, and she was saying, yeah, the open door policy, you can go in. He has certain hours each week from, I think, just certain hours each week that you can go in. Anyone can go in and talk to him about anything they want. So I was like, wow, that's really, really cool, because that's exactly what I need. He's up there, and I need to get my goal out there. So I didn't finish that tour. I walked right to that office. I asked the receptionist, I asked the lady working there. I was like, hey, what are the open office hours for this week? She told me. It was Wednesday from 3 to 6. So I run out, go finish the tour, go home. I get a PowerPoint ready. I get my goal organized, which I haven't told you yet. My new goal. I get that ready. It's about Tuesday night. I get it ready for the Wednesday 3 to 6 open door hours, and so I'm ready. I walk on in, and I get out my computer. I start talking to him. That's my first time meeting him, so it was pretty cool. And I tell him a little bit about me, pretty much everything I've told you so far, and then I tell him my goal for this next school year. Are you guys ready to hear that? Drum roll, please. I want to create an environment that represents the student and the student's goals on Moore Park College soil. That's my goal for this next year. Question, what does that mean? Does that mean I have to create a living environment, like human walls and stuff? No. There's these things called plants out here in this world that are so cool. And I want to make an environment out of that where students can go and live and study outdoors and do all that. So I told him that. And he was happy about it. I mean, I think he enjoyed it. And he told me his goals too. So this is me applying the philosophy now at the first stage with the president of Moore Park College. So I shared with him my goals, he shared with me his goals. And now, that right there is one connection, okay? That is a relationship I've developed on this campus to further my progress for Nature's Finest Club at Moore Park College. So now, with that, he was like, all right, but guys, come on. With a goal that big, you need a lot more than just one person to do this. So you need a community of people and a community of goals to get this thing going. So he gave me a list of people to talk to, and I need to convince and win over and share my goals with them too. And he also gave me a recommendation to read a book, Walden by Henry David Thoreau. And he told me to mark this day on the calendar. So that's how I got here. And yeah, that's why I'm here. Back to my goal really quick. Do I still have time? Cool, quick. All right, so back to my goal, to create an environment that represents the student and the student's goals. So let's take a look at the characteristics of a tree, okay? Let's see here. Takes only what it needs from the soil, requires a natural environment to grow. Try growing a plant in plastic, see what happens. Does not indulge in pleasures of having extra nutrients in its soil, that's key, and does not stop growing. Plants don't take breaks. So, I have a quote from Gandhi, Gandhi's selected political writings. Obsessions with money and property, or with ways of manipulating people, were seen in this light as addictive forms of human bondage. Now, once we get past these natural human addictions, they're natural, they're just naturally a part of us, we can spread our roots deeper into the soil and our branches higher to grow and become our best selves, okay? Because that's our goal on campus. We are trying to, as students, become the best as we can. And we need you guys, the community, our elders, to teach us as much as possible everything you know in order to become just like you and give back to the environment we grew in or to go help out other environments. I have another quote by Thoreau from Walden, the book that he told me to read. This one is about the people in his hometown in Concord that he was talking about. Quote, "We are underbred and low-lived and illiterate." Okay, that's a lot, right? I believe a little bit about this about a lot of places, not everywhere, because there are some really awesome, cool places too. But once we realize this sad reality, we can make change. Boom, change. So that is what we're at right now, okay? We are at a point where we can make change right now to our community and to many other communities too. But to make change, you can't do it alone. You gotta have support, you gotta have people, you gotta have connections, goals, sharing your goals, okay? I'm pretty sure we can't do it without Cal Lutheran either, because they're helping us too. All the communities and all the colleges are a part of each other, trying to help each other grow. So, I have one more quote by Walden, by Thoreau and Walden. "It is time that villages were universities, and their elder inhabitants the fellows of universities." The one town in the United States that I think, in my opinion, is ready to become a university town is Moore Park. From my experience in the community and living in Moore Park, from elementary school to high school, and even more so our college, I think that we are ready for our next step, and that is to become a university. So here is my upgraded goal now. Upgraded goal. I want to create an environment that gives each human the best opportunity to reach their higher self, okay? That is the goal. I'm gonna start here at Moore Park College with Nature's Finest Club and keep going, but once this nucleus gets powerful, it's gonna spread. It's gonna spread real quick to the rest of Moore Park, and it's gonna keep going. It's gonna keep going until we all become the best we can be, because that is what we are all about. So thank you very much for letting me speak. I'm Peyton.
You see why I stood no chance against Peyton. And I hope you took no offense by the reference to elders. And my apologies to Dr. Hoang, because who would want to follow that? But let me tell you about Dr. Hoang, because we've got an impressive person to follow. She holds a PhD, first of all, in political science, just to establish academic chops, with an emphasis in international relations from Boston University, and is a professor of political science at California Lutheran University. She was a Fulbright Scholar and visiting research associate at the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies. Dr. Hoang has taught courses on international relations, global studies, terrorism, ethnic conflict and genocide, public policy, and women in politics. In addition to her faculty position at CLU, she was a policy analyst for Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa and Council Member Jose Huizar on education and budget issues. She's also worked as a policy consultant on projects related to female gangs, youth civic engagement, capacity building for community-based organizations, and neighborhood councils for the city of Los Angeles. She served as the education policy consultant to promote youth environmental activism for the Million Trees Los Angeles initiative. From 2007 to 2009, she developed the programming for the Environmental Youth Conference in Los Angeles, which has been attended by more than 15,000 youth and more than 300 environmental organizations. Her policy work and research have been profiled in various academic and professional venues, including the Women's Policy Journal of Harvard Kennedy School of Government, Hispanic Outlook in Higher Education, KCLU Radio, and the Ventura County Star. Today, Dr. Hoang will speak to us on the vital need for civic engagement within our communities, including its relevance to student learning and its importance for maintaining a vibrant democracy. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hoang to our campus. So much. It's a pleasure.
Excuse me, I'm bringing my phone out, not to use it, but just for the time, but I can see the clock from here, so. I just want to say, first of all, thank you. This is probably one of the nicest, warmest welcomes I've ever gotten to any event I've ever spoken at, because it's clear to me that you all are very dedicated to not just your students and to the institution, but also to the philosophy of learning, which is, we were speaking about at our table, which is high contact student learning. And I really appreciate that, because I think it's the ethos that my institution follows as best as we can, and also just a personal philosophy as well. In listening to President Sanchez introduce me, I now realize that I must cut out a section of my talking points, so I don't have to bore you with my background information. But just to get to the heart of the matter, which is, why civic engagement? Why is it important? And I think as faculty and staff, how we can cultivate civic engagement in the work that we do and at the institution. I always try to start my talks about anything with some definitions. And I think the one that obviously comes to mind is, what is civic engagement? And there are many conceptions, definitions of civic engagement. I think the one that I tend to work with is the one that is pithy, where the fewest words with maximum meaning. And that the definition that I use is the one from the American Psychological Association. And they define civic engagement as individual or collective actions to address or to solve issues of public concern. It's simple, but not simplistic. So I think we know then that civic engagement is a contact sport. It's not just what we can teach or talk about, but it's also a doing. It's an action-oriented philosophy. And with that in mind, I can wanted to talk about some of the ways that I have incorporated civic engagement, promoted civic engagement, and also done civic engagement in my own work and personally and professionally. As President Sanchez mentioned, I have a background in public policy, working in public policy. My first 5 or 6 years at Cal Lutheran, I continued to consult for Villaraigosa because as I was resigning, saying, oh, I'm going back to academia, I think it's really where I belong, he said, okay, I understand, but just so you know, once you work for me, you always work for me. So I'm hiding from him because he's probably gonna run for governor. And I wanna take a break from politics for a while. But I stayed on as a consultant because of the projects I got to work on, and President Sanchez mentioned the Environmental Youth Conference. Those projects were so important to me because I think, the first year we did it, we had 3,000 youth involved. The second year we had 7,000. The third year we had 10,000. And I knew that we had good momentum and I wanted to be a part of that and continue to be a part of that, but also it gave me the opportunity to bring my students at CLU into the project as well. So my work with civic engagement is as a practitioner, and it's also as a scholar, of course. I've done research about civic engagement, and I have published articles on civic engagement. But also, I think the most fulfilling part of one of the most fulfilling aspects of my civic engagement work has been in the classroom as a teacher, bringing students into civic engagement projects. For most of my classes, I make a concerted effort to incorporate civic engagement. And I do that primarily by developing what I call project-based assignments. So they can do projects that require that they engage the external community. I actually require all of my upper division students to research projects or pursue projects that require that they engage actors off campus. So if you're interested in this policy or this issue, you have to go interview people, at least 2 different organizations or at least 2 individuals off campus. I really see the community as an extension of the classroom, and that's really something I've taken to heart. So I think the question, I sit at faculty retreat meetings, every year as well, and I must be honest, I probably don't have the same enthusiasm that Peyton always has at the start of the school year. I believe in kind of the slow burn, so I'm working my way up to getting back into the school mode. Just went to Hawaii. So for me, I didn't prepare with a PowerPoint. I prepared for this talk by getting acupuncture, because that's kind of a little bit more my mode right now, and it works for me. So one of the things I always think about whenever I hear speakers come and talk at our retreat is, these are all great ideas, but how do you do it? Yeah, it would be great if I could, this technology and that technology, but sometimes, I get a little cynical and think to myself, another technology, isn't that just another way a student can email me? Other than that, tell me how to do it. So I really kind of want to sit back and think, what is the context for civic engagement and how I do it in the classroom and promote it with students? And I think there are 3 components or prongs that I look to. The first one is really at the institutional level, of course. What is the university doing, my institution doing, to promote civic engagement, or at least creating an infrastructure to support it? Well, about 7, 8 years ago, when I really started to want to incorporate civic engagement, I was fortunate. At the time, I didn't know if I thought it was fortunate, but I was fortunate because our president, Chris Kimball, asked me, along with 3 other faculty members, to serve on our strategic planning team, where we would help draft the strategic plan. So 7 or 8 years ago, I said yes. Then he said to me, oh, by the way, it's an 18-month commitment. But I said, okay, well, I can't say no now. But it turned out to be wonderful because one of the things that I was able to do being on the strategic planning team is we, as an institution, put it in our strategic planning plan for that year or for that session that we would infuse or institutionalize experiential learning in every academic program and co-curricular program throughout the institution. And I thought, this is where I'm in a position to advocate for that because I sit in this place. So not only did I, was able to advocate for experiential learning being institutionalized, but because I wrote that part of the strategic plan, it could be worded exactly as I wanted. So while it was a lot of work, it really gave us a great opportunity. And it wasn't just about, okay, this is just another thing that we're asking faculty or staff to do without compensation, without resources, but we built in things like we created an Office of Experiential Learning. And also we created an administration position, an associate provost position of experiential learning. And the mini grants turned out to be a great way to do it because they were not just incentivizing faculty to do it, but also rewarding faculty who were making that extra effort to do that. So I think the first way we can think about incorporating civic engagement is looking at around institution-wise, is there something strategically that can be done? And for CLU, it was putting it in the strategic plan. So for example, our next strategic plan, I think, is gonna focus a lot on being a Hispanic serving institution, since we have, we have the preliminary approval for it, or exemption for it, I should say. So the second thing I looked at when I thought about civic engagement was, the institution, but then next, what is our mission? Like, how would this fit into our mission, and how do I fit into the mission, the civic engagement? And I didn't have to look far with our mission, because the mission, part of the mission of CLU is to, quote, educate leaders for a global society who are committed to service and justice. Well, that is speaking my language. And I think civic engagement is a great way to do it, because we aren't just teaching students about policy or politics, but how can we cultivate a sense and an ethos of responsibility that they have? We don't want them just to be, I want them not just to think, but I want them to do. And am I equipping them with the skills to do that? So in my syllabi, I always mention that part of the mission, because it's so important. And finally, another part of incorporating civic engagement that I looked at is, of course, our student learning outcomes. I have to say, I'm not normally a huge fan of rubrics in terms of numerical rubrics, but I am of principles. I'm a thematic-oriented person. And civic engagement very much fit and complemented some of our student learning outcomes, in particular, an appreciation for diversity. One of the things, I will be honest, that I don't want to say struggled with, but that I definitely noticed and really wanted CLU to tackle was diversity, racial ethnic diversity in particular on campus. And because at that time, the majority of our students were primarily white, and we are in Southern California, and demographically, there was gonna be a change in the next decade, so how are we dealing with that? And the appreciation for diversity, one of the ways we can cultivate that is for students to be civically engaged in different communities. So having students research what I call global communities, meaning communities that are outside of their own racial ethnic identity, so that they can be almost like global citizens within places, especially Los Angeles, where a lot of my work is based. And another aspect of our student learning outcomes that really reinforce the civic engagement element is not just the appreciation of diversity, but also professional preparation. Our students are going to be entering a workplace that is more diverse, more globalized, and more competitive as each year progresses. And I don't think it makes sense, and I know it doesn't make sense to, we try to nurture our students, or I do, but I don't think but I don't want them to live in a bubble and and I remind my students, you should have the experience of trying to contact someone, because I'm telling you, you have to engage the external community, and them not answer you. Because you know what? Them talking to you, being interviewed by you, letting them work with you, is a favor to you. They don't have open office hours for you the way we do. And it's such a good life lesson for students, especially for, to be honest, some of our Cal Lutheran students who have been more sheltered. I think it was such a good awakening, very sobering for them to say to me, Dr. Hoang, I tried to contact this organization and they wouldn't respond. And I said, well, when did you email them? Last night. And I said, oh, okay. So, we can, let's talk about appropriate work hours, business hours, and, how that's what they would call your problem, not theirs. You know, and so even the civic engagement for our students creates a lot of life lessons that I think are so beneficial. So for me, civic engagement is beneficial because it promotes really a form of professional development, career development. They learn wonderful just life skills by doing it. And they, I think, contribute directly to society by doing so, for the most part. You know, sometimes they're a little harried, but I think for the most part, and I always try to make sure that the community organizations we work with get something out of it, which is they have to provide service to that to that organization. They can't just take from it, because I think that's an important part of civic engagement. So I want to just provide some concrete examples too. In my courses, as President Sanchez mentioned, I teach several courses in public policy. And my public policy courses include women in politics and policy and advocacy. I teach a course on policy, or actually policy advocacy and social change. And the assignments I have for students are they have to design a project where they identify a problem in society, they research it, they must engage with community actors that are working to address it, and they have to provide service of some sort to it. And that can include doing a program audit for them, doing a program evaluation. That could be helping them with social media. There has to be a mutually beneficial relationship. I don't think civic engagement works if I just send my students out there and say, find out what you can find from that organization. It's really important for students to, frankly, put in sweat equity too. So I think that those kind of project-based assignments help students. Now, I think it makes sense in a lot of political science classes to incorporate civic engagement. It's probably easier in some fields than others, and in upper division rather than maybe intro courses. But in my intro courses, even though maybe students aren't necessarily ready yet to be civically engaged outside of off our campus, I've tried to encourage them to be civically engaged on campus. For example, I will say you are required to attend at least one campus event, speaker, and not just attend, but you have to actively participate, and you have to write, a short paper about not just summarizing what the event was or the speaker, but also how do you think this event or speaker relates to your understanding of global studies or whatever, or current events. Even if they can start thinking in civic engagement terms, I think that's a step towards progress. And I have assignments like them writing opinion editorials. Opinion editorials about an issue they care about, whether it's the one-child family policy in China or climate change. Because it's not just important for them to know and be informed about issues, but I also want them to learn how to take a position on an issue as well and advocate for it. And I think an op-ed is a good way to do that. I think one of the most fulfilling ways that I've been able to bring students and encourage and foster a sense of civic engagement in students is through my research. I have, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've collaborated with one of my colleagues who's an environmental chemist on a project dealing with civic engagement, pesticide exposure, and farm workers in Oxnard. So we were very fortunate and got a lot of money for it from California Wellness Foundation, because I have to, I think by law, say that. So we were really fortunate to get a grant, and we made the decision that we were going to bring students in a very meaningful way. They weren't just going to be our assistants. We said, okay, we need you to engage in the community. So we're gonna do surveys, community-based surveys. It's community-based research. We're doing community-based surveys. We are all, whether you're the science student or the political science student, we're all going to design the community-based surveys. We also had to collect water, soil, and urine samples to test. So we're all collecting urine. It's civic engagement. We're going all in. So put on your big girl pants or big boy pants, and we're getting urine. That's what we're doing these next couple weekends. And we did it for about 2 years. We had students come, and I have to say, I thought I would get off easy because I'm like, oh, no, I'm the political scientist, the environmental chemist, he'll have to do it. But we actually found out because it's a primarily, obviously it's a Mixteco community or Spanish-speaking minorities, and my colleague, he was willing to do it because he's an environmental chemist, but because he was a white, older male, there were trust issues. So I ended up having to collect all of the samples. I'm not kidding you, I did for 2 years. 2 years I did, but it made me a better person. It really did. Because it's a lot, if you think about it. One of the challenges with civic engagement, like true community-based civic engagement, is being grassroots. And I have to say, before we brought students into the project, we spent a year volunteering, my colleagues and I. The faculty, he and I both spent a year volunteering for that organization. We did some talks on health, on civic engagement at their monthly meetings in Oxnard, because knowing what I do about community-based organizations, they don't like snobby academics to come in and tell them what their problems are and what they need to do to fix their problems, and that to be translated to them. That's just not going to go over well. And we fortunately all spoke Spanish, but we didn't speak Mixteco, so we had a translator. But at least us having the language ability created some currency for us. But before we even started this community-based project, I said we are going to spend a year just getting to know the community and them getting to know us, because I didn't want them to I don't want them to think that we were in there just to use them as research subjects and leave them at that point. And we continue to have a really good relationship with these organizations. And what's been so great for the students is that we made it a point every year to select students from Oxnard. So they were working on a project about their own communities, about their own neighborhoods, about their own schools, and what kind of environmental health risks and exposures they were involved with. And also, the other end of it, which is how the communities could be civically engaged or better engaged on environmental health issues. And I'm actually proud to say that two of our students both enrolled in graduate programs in chemistry, and they want to go back to their communities and use that knowledge. I have a student who is finishing up her PhD in environmental policy at UC Irvine, and another student who is starting her second year doing environmental law. Those to me are success stories, not because necessarily that they got scholarships or where schools they got into, but the fact that they made a connection. What civic engagement does is connects things. It connects the class stuff with the real world. And I do think that when students can make that connection between classwork and the real world, they are more not just intrinsically motivated, but that knowledge sticks. It sticks. So when you think about civic engagement and whatever you can do, I just strongly suggest that you think about how much it benefits students even beyond your classes, even beyond your, when they're at your institution. It has stuck with our students who have been involved in this project. And we made them co-authors when we published. We brought them to conferences, and I said to them, we are presenting at academic conferences, not student conferences, we're regular conferences. So the first conference they did was in Vancouver at a conference on wellness and health. And they presented with other scholars, practitioners in the field. And I think that sense of pride for them was wonderful because they felt like they had actually contributed to not just the academy, but also to their communities in sharing the results. So thank you for indulging me, and good luck to your start of your year, and have a wonderful school year for everyone. But I should take questions? Okay.
We do have time for a few questions, and the great Michael Hoang specifically asked that you repeat the question so that we don't have to hand the microphone to the audience.
Thanks.
If there are any questions.
Yes. What did I learn from the urine samples? Well, yeah, we've actually published some of the results, so I can tell you the stuff that we've published. What we have found is that there is definitely exposure to pesticides, but none of them have exceeded what we call the EPA threshold levels. It's very difficult to prove pesticide exposure that reaches that threshold level because so many pesticides are water soluble. So one of the things that we had to do is we had to ask them, we could only sample people who had been in the fields within the last 2 weeks, but we don't know how accurate that was. So, so what we have found again is exposure, but not necessarily threshold risk. Does that make sense? Yeah. But just so you know though, growers are still very upset with us. So, yeah, they're really upset with us. I think just because we have the project, but I think, you know, that's just the way it's gonna be. Yeah. Other questions? Yes. Yeah. Oh, it's ethnography. Yeah, I do. They do ethnography. Yes. Good question. How do I prepare students to go out and do community-based research? I absolutely have to prepare them. Otherwise, it's a hot mess. Absolutely. So, for example, in our research capstone, they spend the first half of the semester purely on research design, and there are segments about they have to fill out an institutional review board application, and I'm the IRB board. So if you don't, and I go beyond, you know, obviously even what IRB would probably approve. And I've honestly had to say no to certain things. I had a student who said, I want to do a project on sex trafficking in Los Angeles. And already I was like, oh gosh. But then this is where I was like, this really sealed the deal for me as a no, because she said, but I want it from the perspective of the sex traffickers. And I said, that's just not gonna happen, so keep it moving. So she didn't do that. So I do it, so I think in many ways using that research design phase is where we do heavy ethics. They are also required to do, NIH actually has an online IRB certification that's free. So I actually make them do that because we at our institution have to do that to submit IRB. So I said, this is what you have to do. So the ethics gets reinforced that way. I also do a class session on cross-cultural understanding and communication. Because my work is heavily influenced by, you know, anthropologists and ethnography as well. So we do that, and we honestly talk, and I really, students kind of laugh at me at first, but then they get it because I actually spend a good amount of time talking about how important it is to be nice and professional and what that means. And reminding them that anybody who talks to them or works with them is doing them a favor. It is, and not only that, but you are providing extra work for them. So what I used to, and what I'll sometimes do with some students who I think need extra help is I will accompany them on the first or second interview. Or site visit, I have them do as well, just to see, and in the past we've done a practice site visit where we do it on campus, of something on campus, just to see how they can draw meaningful results from observations. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. I'm happy to send you any of my materials too, because I've done it for the last 7 years, and knock on wood, it's been pretty good so far. But I have to say, I really recommend the NIH training, online training, and using the research design process to really teach them about what it means to conduct ethical research, not just research. And say no to any projects about sex trafficking, just as a general. I mean, I had a student who wanted to, like, I want to do a project about, you know, gang members, current ones, and how they perceive violence. I'm like, no, why would you think? Like, no, I feel comfortable being around those people. I'm like, even more so, no. So it's amazing what students will come up with that I have to honestly say no. And they're like, will it never get, I said, I have to still care about your safety. IRB doesn't care about the safety of the researcher, but I care about your safety, which is what I end up having to say to them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.